Hello crafters, this is Yana Smakula. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have an inspirational video for you featuring more new Christmas products from Spellbinders. It's the end of July, temperatures are hitting triple digits if we're talking Fahrenheit, and it is unbearably hot. Still, Christmas is my favorite holiday and making Christmas cards brings me immense joy. Today I have 5 card ideas for you, all created featuring one awesome die set from Spellbinders called Winter Welcome Sled. This die set is amazing. It is what the name suggests, a set of dies to make a sled, but it also includes several embellishments such as a skate die, poinsettia dies, and holiday greenery dies, all designed to help you decorate your sled. If you go on Pinterest, you can look up Christmas sled decor, and it turns out it is a very popular decor element for Christmas. There are numerous ways to decorate the sled, and I wanted to translate those decor ideas into my cards. So each of my 5 cards features a slightly different way to decorate the sled, using both the dies included in the sled die set as well as other dies from my stash. Now, the sled is super easy to make or assemble. You basically have 3 pieces, the sled runner and sleds. You can cut the runner from some color of metallic cardstock. I used mere gold from Spellbinders. You can also go with silver. And I also like to cut another layer from white cardstock, and I just glue them together for added stability. I simply like things to be a little bit more sturdy on my cards. Next, the slats can be cut from any color of cardstock you want. You can go with craft to resemble wood. I use the new Spellbinders Dune cardstock for that. Or you can go with any other color you want to set the color scheme for your card. Now, the way the slats are designed, they add wood grain detail to the die cuts, so you don't even have to worry about using wood grain paper. The die will add that detail for you. Now, the thicker the paper you use, the more prominent the detail is going to be. So, for example, 80-pound cardstock is going to have less prominent detail once cut compared to 110-pound cardstock. Now, you can also dry emboss the slats after die cutting or even before die cutting to have the detail stand out a lot more. Now, I also die cut the slats twice for my sled, again, to make things a bit more sturdy. Now, here's one of the sleds that I put together. This one is using that new Dune cardstock from Spellbinders. And you can see that I also ink blended some brown from the bottom. I wanted to add foiling, a foiled sentiment onto one of the sleds. And to do that, I used a negative die cut piece, the one that was just left over from die cutting the slats that I used to put onto the sled. And I used one of the sentiments from the new Glimmer Wishes Glimmer Plate set from Spellbinders. So I picked one that made sense for this card and also one that fit onto one of the slats. This one reads, "You warm my heart." Now you can also foil one of the larger sentiments and have it run across all 5 slats, for example. Now the sentiment won't really be legible, but it would serve more of a decorative purpose for your sled. I used my hinge method. I taped the sentiment plate onto the paper. I added a strip of matte gold foil. This foil color continues to be my absolute favorite. And I foiled the sentiment in my Glimmer hot foil system. I'm not going to show the foiling process in this video, as this video is not about that. And I have many other videos on my channel that show foiling in great detail. And ta-da! Pretty little sentiment. Now, I need to cut it out so that it is centered on one of the sleds. The sled die isn't open, so that's not very easy to do. And this is why my leftover piece comes into play. Let's call this a template. So I'm going to position my template over my foiling and tape it in place. I'm avoiding placing the tape over the foiled areas, just because when you lift the tape, it can lift some of the foiling. Next, I can bring my die and sort of drop it into the template. I can feel it snap into place, and once in place, I can just use more tape and tape it onto the paper. Next, I can send it through my die cutting machine, and this will give me a die cut sled with a perfectly centered foiled sentiment. Adding this foiled slat to my sled was an afterthought, and because I already have my sled assembled, I'm just going to ink blend brown ink, this is Cappuccino from Simon Says stamp, onto the foiled slat to follow the ink blending of the rest of the slats. Ink blending actually helps the foiling pop on this cardstock color. Otherwise, foiling blends with the paper, but it doesn't really matter here as this foiling, remember, it's not our main sentiment, it is simply a decorative element of the sled. I used my Barely art glue and adhered it onto the sled, and I love the result. Now to decorate the sled, I had already created 2 skate die cuts. Instead of using the typical white color for the skates, I cut mine from Raindrop cardstock from Spellbinders, and I love the subtle shade of blue. As I was browsing Pinterest for the sled decorating ideas, I saw many skates decorated with pine branches. So I did the same for my card. I cut pine branches from 2 shades of green, Rainforest and Peridot, and I adhered them from the back of the skates, making it look like as if the branches are tucked inside. I also added a die-cut bow. I used a die from the Porcelain Post Christmas Decorations die set. That's the collection with a mailbox. If you don't have that collection, you can look through your stash for any other small bow die. I do have another sled embellished with a bow from the Open House collection from Spellbinders. The style of that bow is quite different, but it still works and looks fun. I used glue and foam adhesive squares and popped the skates onto the sled. Now, I also used the little greenery pieces from the same Porcelain Post Christmas Decorations set to die cut a branch with berries. I used darker blue berries cut from the Spellbinders Partly Cloudy cardstock, and the berry die cut is actually longer, but I just needed the top part with the 3 berries, so I didn't even cut the rest. I also added a couple of white die cut snowflakes, and these were cut using the last year's holiday decoration dies from Spellbinders. Here's a look at this card once finished. I'll talk more about it at the end of this video as all of 5 of my cards were finished in the same way. For my next sled, I went completely different and used a separate die to dress it up. And I think this sled turned out to be my favorite. So I used the More Holiday Decorations dies, new for this year, and I die cut a gold string for the lights. So I have 2 of those, and then I die cut a bunch of oblong lights. I used Glacier, Raindrop, Partly Cloudy, and Cosmic Sky cardstock, all from Spellbinders, to make the lights. And each light has 2 layers, a darker one in the background and a lighter layer in the foreground. My sled was cut from gold and white cardstock, and again, I added matte gold foiling onto one of the slats. This sled and the previous sled were actually assembled slightly incorrectly. The middle slat had to be turned 180 degrees, but I didn't realize it at the time. I only realized it after I had assembled all of my sleds. It's not a big deal, but it still looks fun and it still works, but that's just something that I wanted to point out. Now I adhered the lights strings using glue, and then I used foam adhesive to foam mount each of the lights, alternating the colors and making sure I wasn't blocking any of the foiling. Now it helps to position all of the lights first, play with the placement, and only then remove the liner from the foam adhesive and adhere them in place. And here's a look at this card once finished. I love the white and dark blue color combo here. And by the way, that sentiment was cut from the new Spellbinders Glitter Fun Foam. I used the color white here. Okay, let's go back to the sleds. So like I said, I made and decorated 5 sleds. Once I made the first sled, I had more and more ideas that I wanted to try. So I just kept making the sleds because it was just loads of fun. I did use all of my sleds on cards, but these die cuts would also make great Christmas tree decor. I would probably make them all the same and decorate the tree using them. These are a very nice size, they're not too small, not too big, and they would really make a fun Christmas tree decor piece. So that's just something to think about and maybe try this year. I added a horizontal piece to 2 of the sleds. Now this is the steering bar. This is an optional element that you can add if you want. Here you can see how some of the sleds are assembled incorrectly, with the middle slat turned the wrong way. The red one is assembled correctly. The red one uses a wreath die from the Open House collection. It actually comes from a spring die set called Open House Spring. I paired it with that pretty porcelain post bow and added a die-cut joy at the bottom. Now, the joy was cut using the Be Bold uppercase alphabet set. It is a classic timeless alphabet die set, and you can use it to create custom sentiments for these sled cards or any cards, really. Now, the last sled, the pale blue one, uses the other type of bow that I was talking about, and that one comes from the Open House Topiary set. Now, you can also spot some little poinsettias on some of these, and these come from the Christmas Blooms die set. So lots of different die sets mixed in together to decorate these sleds, and you can really look through your stash, try to find some small die kits you can use to decorate these die kits. I finished all 5 of my cards in the same way. I used the Knock on Wood 3D embossing folder from Spellbinders, and I dry embossed a new gorgeous indigo cardstock color. This cardstock is so me. I love deep, dark, rich colors of cardstock, and this dark blue is simply amazing. Now, I did spray the paper with water before embossing it to make sure the paper fibers would stretch and not crack from all of the pressure in my die cutting machine. I originally adhered my dry embossed panel to a white card base, but when I open it, you can see that blue. There's just too much of a contrast happening between the white and the blue, and I didn't like that contrast. So I made a custom card base using the same color of cardstock, indigo. The sled die cut worked best on a mini slimline card size versus a regular A2. I was actually planning to make A2 cards, but then I couldn't find a proper place for my sentiment, and that's when I opted to make the mini slimline cards. The mini slimline measures 3 1/4 by 6 1/4 inches, and this gave me enough room to house the sled, add a pretty script sentiment at the bottom, along with an additional foiled sentiment. Next, I used the new Mix and Match Holiday Greetings dies to make these scripty sentiments for my cards. I cut each sentiment from gold mirror cardstock in either black or white fun foam from Spellbinders. I love the Spellbinders fun foam. It is absolutely amazing for die cutting. It really pops back up. It doesn't get squished when you run it through your die cutting machine. It really works beautifully for little dainty detailed sentiments like these, not to mention bigger die cuts. So I adhered the 2 layers together, the gold mirror die cut and either the black or the one fun foam, and I adhered the sentiments under the sled. I only used the white fun foam for the word Merry on the Merry Christmas Wishes card with a white sled. Lastly, I used fashion dots in gold from Spellbinders to decorate each of my cards. I love these dots, and I used to use them a lot, but then Spellbinders came out with their crystal mix gems, and I sort of switched to using gems, but I do love the dots, especially for Christmas cards. They're very dimensional, they're very shiny, they're nice and round, and they just add that perfect amount of wow to my projects. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below if any one of these cards is your favorite. Thanks so much for joining me today. Love you guys, and I'll see you next time.